You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane, and it's bubbling over.
Hey guys, I hope you guys are all doing well today. Welcome to this week's podcast. We are still off the mountain. We're having fun. I've got a little bit of an allergy situation happening today, so I apologize for that. But it's going to be a good day. It's the fall is here. The weather is here. The football games are here. And, there's a lot of fun to be had. And so make sure that you spend time with your family this week. Make sure you reach out to somebody, encourage them. But today we're going to talk about something that I think we've all thought about, right? And it's misconceptions. It's what people think about the church, misconceptions of the church. And so we're just going to jump right in. We're going to jump right in and talk about what is it that keeps people from coming to church because they think that it's one way, but then when they get there, maybe they're pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so many people out there like myself and probably you guys. I love going to church. It's so valuable to me. But there's others who dread going to church. And I think a lot of it has to do around ignorance. We don't know what the church is, or you've been to a bad church.
Right.
There are bad churches, just like there's bad restaurants, there's bad schools, there's bad neighborhoods. There are bad churches, and there's good churches.
Yeah, I think it's sad because I think a lot of people have had a negative experience with someone at church, and it's important to distinguish the difference, right? You've had a bad experience with one person or maybe two people at a church, and that church might be, like you said, not a great church, but sometimes it is a good church, and there are people, we don't turn anybody down when they want to come to church, and so we can't keep negative experiences from happening. We try, we do our best.
Well, a lot of people say, church is full of hypocrites. And in one sense, it is full of hypocrites. But what we have to really focus in on is that church is, in one sense, for broken people who know they need to be fixed. And so we're all on a journey of being fixed. And so you can't let, an experience with one person stop you from going to church. Like our church, we have thousands of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are really, really broken. You spoke last week about a guy that, he had a road rage incident. I don't know where he was going, but he got his car shot up, and he came in and went to the altar. And so, see, church is for people who believe there's a God. That's where it starts at. They believe there's a God, and they believe they're broken, and they believe God can fix them.
Yep.
And they go to church.
Well, you go back to the hypocrisy idea for a second. People that go to church still make mistakes. Right. And so definitely. When you look at somebody who is trying to change, they're trying to allow God to change them from the inside out by going to church and doing these things and exposing themselves to God and to his people in this atmosphere of the actual physical space of church. Right. When we see that happening and then we see them the next day and they flip somebody off, they get mad, that doesn't mean they're a hypocrite. That means they made a mistake that day. A hypocrite means that you're pretending to be someone that you're not. And
we don't pretend not to be broken.
Right. And there are people in the church that are like that.
Yeah. Well, some of the self-righteous people are the ones that ruin church.
Yeah.
I mean, a while back, it wasn't too long ago that I had a very, very churched family come to me, or a man and woman. He walked up to the front. She came with him, and he was just furious. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "Somebody in front of us was wearing a beer shirt. A very worldly shirt. And I wanted to just tell him to go home and take it off. And I stood there stunned going, you got to be kidding me. Maybe that's all they had. They're coming out of the world. They're broken. I mean, you can't look past that.
What if it was one of those Christian shirts that, like, instead of saying King of Beers, it said King of Kings on it or something?
Right. But don't you think that some churches or some places do promote self-righteousness, or they breed self-righteousness, and then that gets carried on to different churches, and because of that, that's where the hypocrisy kind of creeps in, where people are like, well, our church, we don't do this, or we don't celebrate Halloween. Some of you guys might have celebrated last night and went trick-or-treating, and that stems from that self-righteousness, right? They're that self-righteous
maybe
attitude.
I mean, some people don't want to do it, and that's fine. It's
right.
Not a big deal. I wouldn't say that they're all self-righteous if they don't do that.
Sure.
But I think...
but I'm saying, looking down at other people, saying, well, you're not as good as Christian as me, or you're not even...
People are like that, yeah.
Self-righteousness can ruin the church quickly.
Right.
And I think anyone who's growing in Christ, we talked about maturity last week. As you mature in Christ, like the Apostle Paul, the more more you grow in Christ, the more you see your sins, and you see that even when you're trying to do your very best, you come up short. And so I think very often we become judgmental in the church. Like this some time ago, it's quite a few years back, that some people in the church world was trying to suggest that no one should go to Disneyland. They ought to boycott Disneyland because they had gay people that work there, homosexual people that work there. And a lot of Christians were getting on the bandwagon. I said, you've got to be kidding me. Yeah. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Why don't you just not go anywhere because they employ sinners, people that aren't like you?
Right.
And it's just ridiculous. So I think today maybe we can kind of look at some of these areas and refocus.
Yeah, so I wrote down the number one misconception of church that I could think of is that people think they're going to be judged when they go. And so what we're saying is it's possible because we don't know who's there, and we can't say that's not possible, that somebody else is going to judge you. What we can say is does it matter? Does it matter if somebody judges you? You have to make the decision to basically have your own resolve and say, I don't care what that person next to me thinks. I'm here for God.
Josh, anybody that judges somebody else in the church doesn't see themselves rightly.
Right.
How can you judge someone for sin or whatever when, as Apostle Paul said, as I look at my life, I'm the greatest sinner of all, because one definition of sin is missing the mark. And the more mature you become in Christ, the further the target becomes.
Well, if you think about that idea of missing the mark, if you have a bow and arrow and you have, the target, and you pace your paces off 20 paces or whatever it is, and you go to shoot that, and every single time you don't hit that little dot, every single time you don't hit
miss the target.
That bullseye, it's sin. And I know it seems crazy, but the truth is that we all have sin in our lives, but hopefully we're improving. Hopefully we're getting better.
As you grow, God expects more out of you, and he moves the bale of hay with the target on it further back.
And so I don't want to deter anybody out there from going to church, obviously, right? There are some people in church that are a little judgy, but there are a ton of people that aren't. And you get to come, and you get to be one of those people if you want to come and fight that kind of attitude. Moving on, you had a whole list of things that people might be frustrated
about.
I
want to say this real quick. I think there's a preconceived idea out there, because I might be the only guy in this group that had no knowledge of Christ before I came, who had, maybe they thought something. And I think this goes on to the fact that allegedly people out there think that people that go to church are perfect. Allegedly, they think they're not perfect. And I think they're a combination of both. And if you're worried about somebody judging you, get over it, because they already are. Right. I mean, right? Yeah. They're judging you no matter whether or not you're living a good life or a bad life, because I do believe that when you come into a world, whether it be Christianity or just the world, people want to have a reason to say, this is why I am the way I am. Right. And I think it's unfairly, because I get a lot of people come to me and go, oh, you're with VBF. Well, so-and-so this. And I go, so how do you know that? Have you witnessed them do this? Or because they have so many preconceived ideas. Yeah. And I think that's something that, most of the things, that baggage I think come along with church is somebody's preconceived idea that was planted there. Right. By allegedly thinking something goes on there.
Let me say something else about having a bad experience at church. The other day I was at Big Five. Yesterday, actually, I was at Big Five, and I had to grab some stuff, and I heard somebody yelling, screaming at the top of their lungs, and I kind of made out what he was saying. He said, "This is the last time I'm ever coming to this wonderful place," and then he swung the door open and marched out. And he flipped out. It looked like he had a package, something in his hands. I think he was trying to return it, and they said no. What was going on with that guy? Like, was it just that one thing that got him to that point where he just blew up, or was it something else? And on top of that, and something else on top of that. See, people have a ton of pressure in their lives. They do. And so occasionally that pressure, that one little thing happens, and that causes them to blow. Like you said, the balloon analogy that you had a few weeks ago in church, it causes them to blow, and they happen to be at church at the time. And then what happens is there's innocent bystanders that are affected by that. And that's
if you come to church with a critical spirit, you're going to find something to be critical about. Sure. Yeah. It depends on the spirit that you come in.
For sure. And so we want to encourage you guys that if you're afraid or intimidated by church, to come anyway. Don't worry about what people think, because if they're looking at you funny, that's on them. That's their problem. That is the thing, that whatever they're dealing with, you don't know what they're dealing with. Don't worry about it. Who cares? Who cares?
And I did write down some things about the misconceptions of the church. And I've heard it said a lot that it's not relevant to my life.
Oh, wow.
And that is huge. I mean, what's not relevant to your life? If you come to our church, I mean, some Sundays we speak about, marriages. We might speak about the topic of depression or healing or finances or relationships. I mean, none of that's relevant to your life. And what we do is we take this, this book, this ancient book called the Bible, and we use that as our guide. And so it's not relevant. You're going to the wrong church if you're not hearing things that apply to your life, because we do a lot of topical.
Yep.
And we'll come in and say, let's talk about marriage today. Let's talk about, we had a 3-week series on depression. Let's talk about depression. Let's talk about the inner hidden things in the heart. And that hits everybody. And so I think, again, you said in the beginning, maybe you just had a bad experience in the church, because to say it's not relevant, I don't think that's true.
Another one that I was thinking about is that some people say, why would I go to church just to hear about how bad of a person I am? You hear people say that all the time.
Right.
And that's just not true.
You're not going to hear that in our church.
It's just not true.
No.
How many times have you come and you felt convicted? Yes. Right? Conviction is a good thing. When you feel conviction, that's God saying, hey, I want you to come with me and do a better job. I want you to be the person I created you to be. So stop doing those other things and do these things instead. That's conviction. Condemnation is what I think people think they are going to expect at church. And I'm sure many people have been condemned at church, unfortunately, but that's not from God. See, when God looks down on the church, I've always thought of it this way. He doesn't see a bunch of buildings and on a bunch of street corners and that's a church, that's a church, that's a church. He sees his people who are in those buildings, and he says, that's my church collectively, right? So you look down in Bakersfield, and you have people, unfortunately, that are in the building that are not part of his church.
Well, let's go back again, right? Josh. Conviction. You might come and be convicted when the pastor, whoever's speaking, talks about, you should not lust. Maybe it comes out in the sermon. It's not the subject matter, lusting, but let's say a little segment comes out where he reads a verse, in the verse says, thou shalt not lust. Now you might be convicted, going, man, I've been lusting a little bit too much lately, But that's totally different. You just say, God, forgive me, I'm sorry, and move on,
Well, and then why would God, or in the Bible, why would God say that we shouldn't do certain things like lust or cheat or steal or murder? Obviously, those, we know why you shouldn't do those things, because it leads to a quality of life that is so much less than what we are called to have, right?
Well, that brings me right into one of the points I wrote down, and Tom and Vince might want to get in on this. One misconception of the church is that the church should agree with the world. There's that misconception out there, and people get mad. Well, you Christians, we're not going to agree with the world. Because our Bible is a countercultural book.
When you say the world, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean
I'm not
the world,
sure everybody.
Well, I'm talking about the world. I'm putting in that category of the world.
Like, so it's like
people that don't
majority?
believe in God. People
Okay.
don't believe in God.
Okay.
People that, even if they do believe in Him, they don't want to serve Him. They don't want to be a part of God. That's what I'm referring to. But we are countercultural. Our book that we're basing our life on, it's a countercultural book. For example, people get very upset and say, you guys are against abortion. Well, obviously, our book teaches us that we're not to take life. It teaches us about the sanctity of life. And we're never going to agree with you on the abortion issue, probably.
Right.
And I think, and I'm going to say this, and I might regret it later, but I don't think any church that's biblically based is going to agree with you. Yeah. And so, again, do you guys...
Well, there's been a hypocrisy in the church about that issue, because they will preach, some churches will preach against abortion, but they'll preach for the death penalty. And that gets tricky,
Josh, I thought that's so interesting, because I was invited to share at a Bakersfield College, I think it was, at a class one day, and it was on morals and values. And I think the teacher had them all set up to get me. And I was walking into a trap. And they asked me that question. They said, what do you believe about abortion? I said, I don't think anybody has a right to take life except God. That's what I believe. I believe the book tells me that.
Right.
And so I could see they couldn't wait. And they said, okay, what do you think about the death penalty? I said, I don't think anybody has a right to take life except God. You don't believe in the death penalty? I said, I'm one of the few that don't. I don't believe in it. And I go, I'm consistent with my values. And I don't want to get off into that.
But Pastor, I think you should. And I think we should. Because I think as I came to the Lord when I was 34, back in 1991, that there was something that I was missing. And it wasn't what the world offered, because I had all that. You know, I had money, I had reputation, I had all that, but there was something still missing. And I found it in the church. And I think as we go into the church, I think people's misconception when they walk into a church is that all churches agree on the same things. Yeah. And when they find that out, they're like, holy smokes, what is this? But I do believe my opinion of the sanctity of life started to change. I needed to know that it was countercultural to where I've been, because where I've been wasn't fixing me. And I say it all the time. Tommy was screwed up. I knew that. I just didn't know how to get unscrewed up. Had everything the world had to offer, but coming into a church, hearing that there are things that are better for you than worse, I'm going, I was doing the things that were worse. No wonder I'm where I am.
Yeah, you were broken. You came in. And I remember the day you came in. You came in and said, I want to get on a journey here, getting right. But Josh, let me go back and clarify something. So I don't like to give our critics, something that they can go with.
Sure.
People will say, well, you don't believe in the death penalty. Well, it's right there in the Bible. In the Old Testament it is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff in the Old Testament that doesn't carry over to the New.
Right.
I mean, I'm just speaking a personal value. And you don't have to agree with me. In fact, most Christians out there don't agree with me. Yep. But I believe with all of my heart that if you believe in the death penalty, I believe you should be willing, if they drew a lottery ticket and you had to pull the lever, I think you should be able to do that. I couldn't, because in my mind, I'm living in the New Covenant, New Testament. I'd be thinking, man, you know what? This person isn't a Christian. And I think if we pray for them another 2 or 3 months, they might give their lives to God. And I cannot take their life at this point. But then again, we're going back. We should have the right in some of these areas to have different opinions in the church without judging one another.
100%.
Again, you show me in the Old Testament, yes, but I will show you a lot of things in the Old Testament that didn't carry over to the New Testament. And so it's just an opinion, knowing most people will disagree with me, but that's what the church is about. Well, we come in and share our opinion, say, this is my own personal value. I'm not telling you have to espouse this value.
If we're following the Old Testament and a woman commits adultery, we're supposed to stone her, throw stones at her until she dies. But the man's good. He's good. So if you guys want to follow the Old Testament, we'll just do that.
We don't want to open that discussion. We don't want to open that can of worms today.
It's just silly. I mean, at the end of the day, look, there are bad people. There are very bad people. And they need to be locked away for good.
But going back, Josh, again, the world thinks, and I say the world, many in the world, let me make that very precise, they think that the church should agree with them. And if you're not following God and his book, and over here you are following God and his book, you're not going to agree on things. God said, I saw you in the womb. I formed you. Before you were even born, I formed you. And so I don't want to get off on that one thing there, but I'm just trying to make a point that the church is not going to agree with the world on every issue.
And I think people are going to come into the church and they're not going to 100% agree with everything that's said from the pulpit. But that's okay. As us that have been in the church for a long time, we have to give people a safe space to work that out, right? To be able to come to their conclusion like, man, let God do that work in them and us encourage them along the way, because we're not... I would say we're not the moral police. That's not our job. The church's job isn't to be the moral police, but to give people a reason to keep coming back and to grow in their spiritual life, but also in their physical life. It's funny because you talked about people, don't want to come to church because they feel like they're going to feel uncomfortable when they come, or, there's going to be this sense of that they don't belong. And I think that's part of when you start growing in Christ, it's getting out of that comfort zone where, let's say this. It's like if you decided one day you're going to get up and go for a run. You haven't ran in a long, long time, and you're going to go run a mile. How hard is that mile going to be to run? It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be tough. But you know that if you stay with it and you stay consistent, that mile is going to get easier and easier and easier. And I'm not saying church is always like a gym, but I think in some ways, as you come into the church, there's going to be this uncomfortable process that probably takes place. But it's also the work that God's doing in you. And I think when that uncomfort hits and you keep staying consistent with it, that's when God starts doing
Can I
things
say
in your life.
it should be a pleasant uncomfortableness? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
You go in going, I'm uncomfortable, but I know I need to be uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Because I know my life isn't right here. So it's a pleasant uncomfortableness.
And you also have to come in knowing that you're not comfortable where you're at, right? Like if you come in saying, well, I'm good and there's nothing wrong with me, then you probably also wouldn't get the same. If you went into a gym and you said, well, I'm good, I'm not going to work out because I already feel great. Well, you're probably not going to see the result that you want to see, right? And so if you go into a church and you think everything's good, you're not going to walk out of there seeing God move in your life.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of it has to do with the older Christians' maturity again. I'm not going to agree with the world on a lot of issues. I might go to a movie show where a lot of people that don't believe in God's there and some that believe in God is there. And if I'm living according to the book, it's quite possible that I'm going to go, there's too much cussing in this thing. They're taking God's name in vain, and that's my father. I'm not comfortable with this. And there's a sex scene coming on right now. I don't like that. I made a mistake by being here. But to be able to walk out and not in a self-righteous way, looking at everybody like, I'm too holy, I'm not staying here, which some Christians give off that air, to walk out and say, hey, I got to leave right now. I'll talk to you later, but you have a good day, and maybe we'll meet for lunch next week. And you're not condemning them, but you're also showing by your lifestyle that you can't approve of what's going on in there.
Right.
Later on, it might come around, the conversation might come around, and you might say, yeah, I've given my life to God. And when I saw that sex scene, I found myself getting pretty excited. And I went, this is not conducive to where I want to go. And so because I'm human and I'm a red-blooded American man, I just thought I should remove myself from that. But you're doing that without judgmentalism. And I think that makes a big difference.
Big time.
Well, I think there's a thought process out there that church changes people. And I'll be here to tell you, church does not change a single person. Church is a place where people go and you introduce them to the Lord.
Yep.
And the Lord, once they accept Jesus Christ into their heart, that's the only chance people have of changing their behavior.
That's right.
So we can't decide whether somebody's doing something bad outside the church and, the church isn't doing their job. Because doesn't it go back to, if you use the gym analogy, the gym analogy is really done once a person decides to start engaging in weight training, eating right. And pastor, in our church, one of the things I love about our church, and I've never found a need to go outside of our church because I feel everything I have has been developed inside there, is God changes me a little bit at a time. And as he starts to change me, my thoughts about taking life changed. I thought abortion is wrong. I thought capital punishment is wrong. My mind started to change. I started to realize that it's that. So if anybody comes in the church thinking, I just go sit in the pew and I'm going to change, right? It's not happening.
Well, Tom, the church is also a place where there's gifted people exercising their gifts.
Yes.
And we have those different gifts. There's maybe a person there with a gift of encouragement, one with a gift of teaching, gift of knowledge, gift of helps. And we all join there together. And I think church, more than making you a better Christian, I think it confirms that you're on the right road sometimes. Sometimes there's a word given to you about something that you weren't aware of, and you go, whoa, that's going to change my life. That's so cool.
I think a church is a place you come to be changed.
Right.
And whether or not you change or not you got to get with the program. When you say, Pastor,
I agree.
You got to get with the program.
So check this out. Pew Research did a
P,
study.
like letter P or
Pew, yeah, P-E-W.
Pew.
They did a study about 5 years ago. So, granted, a lot has changed in 5 years. But 5 years ago, they asked people why they don't go to church, and only 28% said I'm not a believer. So, okay, that makes sense, right? But then the other majority are broken up into two categories. One is I practice my faith in other ways, which is the largest.
Right.
And two, I haven't found a church I like.
There you go. That's the big one.
And
Let me ask you this question. VBF, we have a very unique personality. And for our listeners and viewers out there that maybe don't go to church and they've been thinking about it, I mean, when you walk into VBF, it's not the same as walking into some of the other churches in the community because we all have our own personalities. It doesn't mean we're right, they're wrong. There's a lot of good churches in Bakersfield, a lot. But for example, for those out there that might be looking around for a church, when they come to VBF, what are they going to see that might be a little different than the churches they've been in before, the more traditional churches?
What I think, and I'll keep saying it because I heard you say it 32 years ago, that, hey, if you blew it this week, you got 15 minutes, listen to me because I blown it too. I mean, that was something unique. And as I was like, holy smokes, I can listen to this because that's not what you're hearing. Right. Traditionally, it's not what you're hearing.
We're all on the same journey, Tom.
Yes.
And I'm making mistakes as I go along. And again, when people come to church, I'm not trying to show them what a great guy Ron Vietti is. Right. I'm trying to show them sometimes what a screw up I am and how big my God is that keeps loving me.
I heard somebody say, they literally told me one day, they said, if your dad can be a Christian, I can too.
There you go.
And,
that's awesome.
I was laughing. I was like, it's kind of an insult, but it's okay. That's good.
It's a good insult.
It's a good insult. Yeah. I like that.
One of the things I think is huge, and I'm not just saying, and I think a lot of churches can do this, obviously do this, but that we're progressive in our knowledge and we're willing to learn. If we thought we were wrong before, we're willing to own up to that and continue to move forward. And I think one of the big misconceptions for people, this is also a misconception, is that churches are stuck in the past or that they are not moving forward with progressive knowledge. And I know that's a dangerous territory to rock where, well, you're going away from the word. I think there's a difference between going away from the word, but also being progressive and saying, you know, we didn't have it right in the past, but we're willing to move and evolve as we grow, not only with one another in a community, but as we grow closer to God, we're seeing, hey, we might have got this wrong in the past.
You say we're progressive too. We don't do everything like the traditional church has done in the past. We're not afraid to break the rules sometimes. Right. For example, we wanted to, years ago, and I mentioned this on another broadcast, we were celebrating Easter, and we had an illustration we wanted to really amplify. And so we decided to come in the church on a Harley Davidson. Now, we never really knew that another church has done that, which I'm sure they have, but we didn't have knowledge of that. And we came in, and it came across really, really good. But people can judge you for that, going, you can't do that. Why? Where does it say in the Bible, thou shalt not come in the church on a Harley Davidson? I mean, where does it say that at? And so we're not afraid to break the traditional rules. We've done a lot of crazy stuff in church. We're just praying and we go, you think we could do this? Is there anything wrong with it? Is there anything sinful about it? Is there anything that says we can't do that in church? What were you going to say?
One of our friends that are close to us in our community said she brought a friend for the first time on an Easter, and we had a George Bush impersonator. And she's like, this is church? What? This doesn't even make sense. But what was cool is she was talking about it. She said it broke a barrier. And for most people, they'd say, well, I can't believe you had that in church. They'd be upset. But for us, not that it was all strategic, but for you, Pastor, you believe laughter is a huge part of breaking people down and letting them know they're in a safe place. And that's progressive in my mind, to think, you know, we're just not going to just come in and be all straight serious. And, you know, and it was on an Easter or this day where people, yes, it's this big holy day, but you're willing to break this mold of what people thought it should be, to do something different.
It could even be strategic, Vince.
Right.
I watch people's, their body language. And for example, like on Easter, when a lot of non-believers come, sometimes they'll come in and by their body language, they seem to be telling me, okay, hotshot, what are you going to give me? You know, come on, bring it on. I'm ready for you. And we do something silly, something funny, something crazy. And as we do that, I find them laughing and I see their whole body language changing. And they're going, hey, you know, this is pretty cool. We disarm them. Right. And again, we're not doing it for that, but sometimes it's strategic.
Right.
We think that the Bible says that humor is medicine.
Right.
And sometimes we just like to get people to let their guard down, do something crazy funny, and then we hit them with whatever God's telling us to give to them.
Going back to what you said earlier, Vince, that we allow for change in our opinions and our thoughts based on the word, right? We're not talking about change because we feel like it or because it's our opinion. We're talking about we look deeper into Scripture, and if God teaches us something new, then we agree with God. 100%. That's the thing. Yeah. I was reading a blog about why people don't go to church, and the third one on this blog by Carrie Newhoff says legitimate doubt is prohibited. That's one reason why people don't go to church.
Oh gosh, we foster doubt sometimes.
We do. We really do. Right. Well, look, there is a there is a place for doubt. There is a place for asking questions. And if it's a good question, it needs to be asked.
Hey, my namesake in the Bible, Thomas, was known as a doubting Thomas.
Yeah.
And Jesus, and I love that about Christ, though. You can be a doubter, and I think we all start there, right? What does it say? Faith is the very first act of faith, believing in something. So I look at Thomas, and he tells his buddy, hey, I'm not believing until I see the holes in his hands and this thing in his scar in the side. And Jesus came and said, here, look at this.
It's funny.
And didn't Thomas said, oh, no, I didn't doubt. He goes, yeah, you did. So I'm going to show you it.
I think Thomas doubted his friends more than he douded God.
Right.
Right? Because they were like, they were telling him, no, he's here.
That's good.
Here.
Well, and I think it's true because he didn't even Jesus go on to say, blessed are those who don't have to see and believe.
Josh, I know this is really a point that you like to elaborate on, but going back to our church, we try to focus on love. I hear people say, well, you know what? There's a lot of drug addicts and there's a lot of people with tattoos and homosexual gay people, and there's this kind of person going, yes, welcome. We welcome everybody to come because, again, and we say it so often it becomes redundant, every one of us in the building are sinners saved by God's grace. And we're all on a journey to getting to be a little more like Christ, and we're all on that journey. And so I don't know where you want to go with this, but I got a whole bunch more points to talk about.
I like to jump in on church that I like. I don't think you're ever going to find a church you like. I mean, I come to our church, and I love being around people. I like the people that are attracted to our church. When you say that word like, you're going to make criterias up that are going to be a moving target.
Right. There's always something you won't like.
Yeah. So if you're out there, I mean, people will use that all the time, and it's still going about the same thing, saying, I am finding a reason not to go there. And if I just generalize it and say, I find what I like.
Some people might not like our music. Our music is very, very, how would you define our music?
Very modern, very...
And great, modern, but worship. I think we definitely
it's progressive and it's more of a modern version of worship.
Yeah, worship.
But again, we're really a different type of church as far as if you compare us to the traditional church.
But we do mix it up, and we're not afraid to sometimes do a traditional song along with the modern song.
Right.
So I would say, definitely we're being who we are supposed to be instead of being stuck to what somebody said church should be. I mean, I've heard you just come in and say we make, and you can expand on this, we make burritos. We don't make hamburgers, right? I mean, we
don't want to be like every other church.
Right.
If you don't like our style, and every church has its own style, its own personality, their own way of worshiping God. And if you don't like that, there's a church on every other corner down there, and we want you to find some place where you're very comfortable.
You mentioned church in light of being a tribe. Right.
That's right. Yes.
And there's the old tribes of the Old Testament and different tribes of Israel, and they're all different, right? They all did things a little bit differently, and you were either part of a tribe or you weren't. And I think a lot of times when you come to a church, it's not about whether you like it or not. It's about whether you feel at home or not.
Yes.
And some people, when they come to our church, they feel at home, and some people don't. And that's
Josh,
okay.
have you ever done that? I've had people come up after service, and let's just use this for the sake of illustration. They're dressed to the nines, and the guy's got a suit on and everything, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they kind of feel uncomfortable because 99% of people in our church, if not 100, are really dressed down. And there's many times I'll say, you know what? They say, it's our first time here today. How did you like it? Well, and you can tell they weren't really. And man, we're just glad you're here. But what kind of church are you looking for? And we might say, man, the church across town, this is a really good one.
Yeah, sure.
And they're more of that tribe. And there's this other one, it's just a few miles from here. And you might really like that one. Churches do have their own personality. But the main thing is we do teach the Word of God. And that's the big point.
What
that's
about
the big thing to focus on.
this massive criticism that probably none of us want to talk about? But a lot of people say, I don't want to go to church. All they want is your money, right? And yeah, like we would love for you to come, to be a part of the church, to tithe, all these things. But people never realize how much we give. They don't realize how much we take care of people.
They don't understand the concept.
And who do we give to? Teen Challenge, Crisis Pregnancy Center, Rescue Mission. I mean, we give a lot.
And
but
individual people.
Let me go back to that concept, though, Josh, because for years I did not want to talk about money. I didn't even want to mention the pulpit. And the Bible does have things to say about giving to God and tithing, which is 10% of your income, offerings, on and on. But one day I felt like God really had a conversation with me and said, you know what? Because I was having a hard time talking about giving because there was a lot of poor people there, and I didn't want them to think that we were like that all we want to do is talk about giving. But when it does come up in a Bible study or whatever, we address the topic, because now I understand that if people give to God, they get blessed so much more than they would have been otherwise. This is for their own benefit. It's not so much that we want your money, but when you really give to God sacrificially or whatever, you get so blessed that blessing is so much bigger than your giving. And so
we were just talking on the way up here about someone who we're going to give money to their family that are they're in need. Right. And so people don't know about that stuff because we can't publish that stuff. We can't say, hey, this person needed this, and so we gave them, and so you just never know. Like, if you are coming to the church and you become a part of the church, there might be a day where you're in need and we could help you out.
Yeah. In the Bible, they laid the money at the apostles' feet and they distributed as need arose. But weekly, regularly, we're giving to people, man. They're in tears going, man, we needed this so much. And you feel like, where's the video camera? Let's get this, show the people how blessed they would be if they knew where their money was going. But you can't do that. Right. We're not given that money for publicity. Right. And we do it all the time. We're always giving.
Missions in Africa, orphanages.
Oh, orphanages. We got how many orphanages in Africa?
Yeah.
We got, 300 orphans in Africa?
Yeah, there's a lot.
And the thing about it is, if you come to our church, I don't think you ever hear about money, as far as, man, we're taking the offering right now. I'm going to have my wife come out and she's going to cry and her mascara is going to run down her cheeks because we need money.
And if you
just don't do that.
If you come visit our church, don't feel bad. Just sit. You're there, sit there. Don't worry about the offering basket or anything like that. Right. Just come and sit.
I've said it before. If you come in our church Sunday and you came with the intention of giving away $1 million, I would say to you, if you can't give with joy, don't give it at all. Right. Don't give it. Yeah. But let me know you're thinking about it, and I will follow you to your car, praying for you all the way to your car, that you would give it. Now, does that go to us? Does that change our salary? No, not at all. Right. It's more money we give the mission field, more money we give to the orphans. Well, we get pretty excited about it.
It's also opposite. I don't think I've ever seen a church do this. You've put money back into the baskets and told people, get what you need out of the basket. I don't think I've even seen that done anywhere else. And
I think
that's a pretty big mind blow.
I even think we made the Californian one time, or our local newspaper, when we were at the fairgrounds. Because remember the first time we were at the fairgrounds, we did that. And we had we had 5,000 people in the stands, and the buckets passed. And Pastor Ron says, tonight, if you need some money and don't take it, this is where you're going to sin.
You're going to sin.
And I think somebody picked up on that and reported the fact that this church gave away money, which is a countercultural thing. And I always keep saying this because I do believe it's important. Until God has your wallet, he doesn't have anything.
See, that's the concept right there, Tom. And we know that now as we've matured and went to a deeper level of walking with Christ. That if he doesn't have your money, he probably doesn't have your heart. But let's go back to that. I mean, the last time we did that thing of giving money away, it was on a month that we had a really good income. We really felt blessed. So I called somebody before church. I said, go down and pull out $20,000 and get it all in small bills. And we did. We passed, instead of taking offering that day, we just passed around, and we did say, some of you need a coat for your child for school maybe because it's starting to get cold out there. You might need to pay a bill off, whatever. Yeah. Take what you need. And again, we did not do that for attention. Right. We didn't know it was going to hit the Californian or go, whatever it did on the internet. Well, we didn't. That wasn't our intentions.
Well, you know what's so crazy is because I was the person you called. As we did the offering came back and we counted it, and we had more than we gave away. Wow. But I'm just saying, you can't experience that anyway, but experiencing it and acknowledge the fact that that's just a miracle. Because instead of, as people were taking, people were putting in. Well, and I think that's a heart.
And we trust God. I mean, at the end of the day, during COVID, the church had to shut down for a little while. And we reopened, but we had to shut down for a little while. That means there was no offering baskets passed. Right. But yeah, we ended up better off financially after COVID than before. That's only God. I mean, that's God working on people's hearts.
And I know I probably shouldn't say this, There's a lot of things that I probably shouldn't say because I don't have a lot of time to think about them. It's kind of on the spur of the moment here. But during that time, our government was giving away free money.
Yeah.
And so everybody was applying for it. All my pastor friends were applying for it, and we applied for it. And the bank called us and we have almost $500,000 here for you. Come and get it. And we started praying about it. And I don't have time to explain exactly how this happened, but we felt God was telling us to turn that money down, turn it down. Now, that's hard to turn down $500,000 of free money, but we knew that God was telling us not to get that money. And in fact, the final confirmation came through my book, Firestarters. And so lo and behold, we're not about the money. We want to see people have a giving heart because, like Tom said, that is good for their character. It's part of their building their discipleship life to be able to give.
So what about people out there that they believe that the church exists to be kind of a cult, or they believe that if they go to church, all they want to do is control me. They want to take over my mind and brainwash us. What would you say to somebody like that?
Well, I mean, that's not true. We don't want to brainwash anyone. And I don't think you will see that in our format anywhere, that we're trying to brainwash anybody. I have people come up to me all the time, and they'll say, Pastor, what should I do here? I've had people come up and say, hey, I'm getting this big sum of money, and I want to know where I should give it at. And they're waiting for me to say the church. And I'll say, I really don't know where you should give it at. Let's pray and let God put that desire in your heart.
We're literally, we're not about controlling people. We're about freeing people, right?
Yes.
Right. Which is the opposite of that. And it's so funny that I think the devil's real, right? And so many people out there, you 100% believe in the devil. You have a hard time believing in God. How can you believe in one and not the other? I don't know. But so many people, they are giving these thoughts, and I believe they come straight from the pit of hell. I'm getting all Pentecostal, right? They come from the devil, and those thoughts are, hey, if you go to that church, they're going to try to control you. If you go to that church, they're going to try to take from you. If you go to that church, you're going to be judged. Those are all the opposite things of what the church is trying to do.
A rich person, a very popular person came into our church and gave their life to God years ago.
Right.
And right away, someone started a rumor, said they just got him there for his money. We never took his money. If you'll remember correctly, Pastor Tom.
No one will believe this but you and I, because we were there, right? I mean, when you turned down that money,
they tried tithing to our church, and we asked them not to.
Yes.
We said, please, because people are going to say you're here for the money. Give that money wherever you feel you should give it. But let's go back on something here. I watched a movie last night, and it's kind of on my mind. The Bible says, I think it's just King James, it's one of the versions, it says that we're a peculiar people.
What was the movie?
Well, let me tell you about it. We're peculiar people.
I was stuck on the movie.
Okay, let's frame this right here.
Okay.
We're peculiar people. We have a walk with God. We actually walk with God, and a lot of people out there are going to have a hard time digesting that. We walk with God. The movie was, it's an old one, Field of Dreams. With Kevin Costner. And, it kind of demonstrated to me, in a sense, how it goes when you're walking with God. I mean, he was walking out through the cornfields or whatever, and he heard this voice say, if you build it, he will come. And the he, of course, I didn't know was referring to shoeless Joe Jackson at the time. But build it, and he will come. And he kept hearing this voice, and pretty soon he was seeing stuff, but only designated people could see what he was seeing. It was getting very frustrating with him. He was hearing a voice, he was seeing things, and the people around him were saying, you're crazy, this is absolutely nonsense. But he could really see things and hear things. And I watched that movie, and of course I compare everything to our walk with Christ. And it kind of has a comparison.
It does.
As we grow in Christ, we're hearing things. God's moving in our heart by convicting us of certain things. For example, I said earlier that the church isn't going to agree with the world in a lot of things. Like we really feel that no one should get drunk because our book tells us that no one should get drunk. Our book tells us that we should not do anything that creates lust in our heart. So, for example, for me, and we give everybody leeway, they can do this their own way, but it would be a sin for me to go frequent nightclubs. And I've said it before because I don't need to see what's in there. Very often there's girls with short skirts on dancing, and I'm a red-blooded, hot-blooded American man, and I know that's not good for me. So lo and behold, we are a peculiar people because we're really dancing to the beat of a different drum. We're hearing God through convictions of the heart. We're hearing him through reading the word. We're trying to go down a road toward holiness as described in the Bible. And so let's talk about that for a second. With that one version of the Bible, it says we're peculiar people. They're not going to understand us. Does that movie make any sense to you with Kevin Costner?
I think the big difference, though, is if you become a peculiar person and you feel like you hear God, but you push people away instead of bring them into your vision, into what you think is a better life, then I think that's where it gets dangerous. Because I think in our church, I can say we don't shun people out no matter where they've been. I mean, we have gangsters, we have killers that are, which is crazy to say, killers, but we have all these different people, and we don't push them out and say, well, God told us that you don't belong.
We never tell people, here's what God said to you.
Right.
This is what God says to us.
But we bring people, and I would say you, Pastor, bring people into that journey and let them see that journey very transparent versus saying, well, this is just because, and you got to follow me like that. The other thing, and that goes along with, people like the church is out to control. It isn't that we get this book and we say, well, this book is here because we're going to try to control you with it. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, we believe that there's a bigger purpose for your life, and this is going to help lead you into that purpose, into that vision, into that better life.
I think our lives can easily become like one of those 1,000-piece puzzles. You imagine a big table like this,
I hate those things.
And all those puzzle pieces are just scattered all over.
So you put it together.
Puzzles give me
I think
anxiety.
that when you come to church and you meet God, like Tom said, and you start to develop a relationship with God, it's like he puts those pieces together, and your life starts making sense, right?
And I believe that's
what it's about.
And what is a peculiar person, Pastor? Someone that starts doing things that they didn't do before, right? They start doing peculiar things. I'll never forget when I first wanted to go to church. My friend John had an argument because I didn't know how to go to church. He said, we can just go. I said, you can't just go because they're good people. So we called a girl that we thought was religious because she wouldn't sleep with us. So I think that was a good judgment. And we called her and we said, we want to go to church. She goes, you guys want to go to church? So we were peculiar. Just by having the idea we want to go to church. So she said, well, my cousins go to this church over in East Brundage. Why don't we go there? And we go, okay. She goes, if you guys are going, I'm going too. So it was like we're doing something different, but all of a sudden it attracted somebody else who wanted to do something different. Then we got there, all I wanted to do was raise my hand because Pastor Ron said at the very end of the sermon, which was a compelling sermon, it drew me in, gave me peculiar thoughts that I never had before. Like raise my hand and accept Jesus into my heart. I want to do that. But I didn't do it that day because I had people around me, embarrassed me. Next week I came, I didn't do it again. But when I came alone, I couldn't wait to get to the hand raising part because I knew I would start my peculiar journey there.
All right, so we're gonna continue on with this word peculiar. It's a peculiar word.
It's not
you looked
in my
up the
Bible.
definition,
but no. I looked up the definition in Webster's and I found this definition just now. It's different from the usual or normal.
Yeah, as I said, right?
And I love
behavior.
that. I love that because it's what is normal? Normal is average. Remember, Dad, when I was a kid, I would come home with my report card and I'd be so excited that I got a C because I said that was average. I said, "Look, Dad, I'm like everyone else."
You said you wanted to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
I said, why aren't you making A's? Because I want to be like everybody else.
Yeah. And I didn't understand what it meant. And so many times we end up just kind of living our life without any direction or without any purpose, and we just kind of blend in with the crowd. We become like everyone else. We have the same problems as everyone else. We watch the same TV shows as everyone else. We stress like everyone else. We just let life happen to us. And then how sad would it be to get to a point where you're 80 years old and you look back and you think, I just let life happen to me. On the other hand, you could be a person that takes charge of your own life and learns to become the person and allow God to put that puzzle together.
Let me go back, and again, being redundant. Walking with God, we're on this journey, and the Bible says that God is making us more like Jesus Christ. We're predestined to be conformed to his image. And how do we do it? I've used it before. Those little things, those little coloring book things we used to get. And they would have the numbers, and you start at 1, and you connect it to 2, and connect 2 to 3, and 3 to 4. And when you got through, you had this picture. And that's kind of what it's like on our journey with the Lord. going back to that Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams, see, we do preach at VBF that you can hear God's voice. Mm-hmm. And of course, in that movie, Kevin was hearing something. No one around him was hearing it. And obviously, no one around us is hearing what God is speaking to us. We hear his voice, and that really throws people off sometimes. We hear him through convictions. For example, if I'm convicted of something and it won't go away and I'm convicted, very often we say that's God speaking to me through those convictions that will not leave us. Sometimes when we're reading the Bible and a verse will jump out at you and you go, whoa, and you can't get it out of your mind. And very often that is God speaking to you. We know God speaks to people because we talked the other day about the Old Testament and the Bible and about divine inspiration and how that sometimes some of these prophets would sit down and God would just overwhelm them and they'd just start writing what they were hearing in their heart. And so we are peculiar people in a lot of ways. And I think one of the things that is good with VBF is sometimes we try to communicate that peculiarity, that's a better word. We try to communicate it in such a way that people won't think we're totally off our rocker.
Right.
Again, when I say we're hearing God say something, it doesn't mean that he's speaking audibly to us. And a lot of people might misinterpret that and say, well, that's, they're cuckoo. But when you get in and see, what we're experiencing, you might want to experience it too. It's really, it's like the coolest life that I could even dream of having.
Well, why do you guys think that someone should commit to a church? Because there's a difference between attending a church and committing to a church. And obviously, we want you to commit to a church, especially when you don't agree with everything, right? I think that's huge. I think it's really important. I'm just going to answer the first part of that. I think it's really important that for our own character and our own development that we commit to something that is outside of our normal comfort range, right? That we commit to something that we don't fully agree with all the time, or commit to something that is that has a group of people in it to where you're choosing to be a part of that tribe. You're choosing to be a part of that group. I think that there's something that happens in our hearts and in our minds when we do that.
Commitment helps you persevere.
Yeah, 100%.
For example, if you're not committed to a marriage by marriage vows and a contract, there's times you want out of that marriage.
Right.
But that commitment kind of ties you in. If you don't commit to a church, you're going to become very fickle, and you'll probably become what we call a church hopper, because there's times that you're going to maybe go to a church service. And again, we said this in the beginning, God might want to make you a little uncomfortable because you're living a lifestyle that's going to really create havoc down the road and injure you. And so I think commitment causes you to have perseverance.
It's funny, church hopping, that's a funny idea. I was thinking about, just now as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the New Testament church as they were growing, as Paul planted a bunch of churches, Peter and John also a little bit. There's always churches in different towns. So in order to church hop, you had to take your whole family to a whole another city, right? Like there was one legitimate church in each town. And I was thinking, really there's only one legitimate church for you. There's only one legitimate body that God wants you to be a part of. And there are seasons. You might be a part of something for a while, and you might move to another city or move to another place, and God might change your commitment level or, to a different group of people. But ultimately, when God leads you somewhere, he leads you somewhere, right?
Well, for example, God led me to start this church, almost 50 years ago. And he led me to start it by giving me a vision. And in that vision and that revelation, he said, go start a church for me. And I knew it was God. Now, I'm committed to VBF. I've been committed almost 50 years. Have there been times when I want to leave? Yes. But the same God who instructed me to come here is the same God's going to have to instruct me to leave. And I'm committed. And so I think commitment is very, very important.
I think when you're not committed to, like you said, I like the puzzle analogy, you don't get all the pieces if you don't stay in one place. And that's huge because I've been at the church for a long, long time. I came in as a junior hire. My parents didn't come.
Right.
And I'm still getting the pieces. My puzzle's not even close to be put together. But as I hear things from God speaking through you guys, through Pastor Ron, every week I'm able to get new pieces and put it together. And one piece that might be way over here that didn't make sense at one point that he said now all of a sudden makes sense. We had a staff meeting a couple of weeks ago, and you had brought something up, and I had to put pieces together, and all those pieces started making sense to me. I'm like, okay, like, this makes more sense than it ever has made, but it's taking me along this journey. So if you don't stay put, your puzzle becomes 5 different puzzles that you can't put together because you're under so many different pieces.
You miss out on blessings.
You miss out on what you're actually supposed to be building.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Josh, when you say commitment. I think commitment is the beginning of whatever you're starting. I remember in fitness, I was a lab rat. I was willing to do whatever it took, nutritional wise, exercise wise, to get the results I wanted. I think if you commit and you commit to a church, you also become a lab rat.
Well,
because the ideas that being preached from the pulpit, you can say, I'm going to try that. Right. And I'm going to try it because I'm in a contained group and I'm with people that know me, so they're going to be able to see if this is working or not in my life. I've been doing something over the last 3 months, and my wife goes, Tom, why didn't we have you do this years ago? And I'm like, I don't know, honey, but I'm not sure it would have worked because you finally got tired of it and you said this is a problem. And I said, you're right. And I needed to commit to make a difference. Right. And she came back and said, it's working. And how do you have a confined environment where you can get that feedback? Because really feedback is what we want.
I love the idea of a lab rat. It's funny because I've thought of the church analogy in 2 forms. One is what you said a few minutes ago, Vince, that it's like a gym. And one, like you said, like it's like a lab where you're experimenting and doing things. But you think about the lab rat itself. The scientists are putting the cheese or the reward in a certain place in the, in a little, this is one experiment. I'm sure they have lots of experiments, but it's a maze, right? Yeah. The one we all think of. It's a maze, and ultimately it's showing you and allowing you as a rat to experience 5 different failures before you experience the one success. And I think sometimes in church, like that's what church is. It's like, okay, come, experiment, follow God. You're going to find ways to fail here. You're going to find ways to fail, but you're ultimately, if you stick with it, you're going to find ways to succeed. And that's the point. And if you don't stay long enough, how many people leave right before they get a big blessing? Or how many people walk away from God right before he's about to do something? How many people walk away from just multiple blessings?
But let's go back to what Tom said, lab rat. We'll stay with that terminology for a second. I believe if you find a good church where God's really moving, things are happening, you won't have to make yourself go. You will want to go. Yes. And for example, what Tom said, they're finding that these principles that we're teaching work. Right. Years ago, I said, okay, I want you to start giving sacrificially to God, and I promise you'll be blessed. And so if you give to God, I'm going to hit you with a challenge. For the next 3 months, give to God. Give your finances, your time, or whatever. If you're not blessed, we will give your money back to you. And no one but one person asked for it back. Only one person. And so what we're doing is we're presenting the Word of God and saying, hey, God has promised us in His Word that these things will work. And now we're challenging you to try them to see if God's right, which He is. He always is. But I think if you found a church that's really birthed of God, which some aren't, some are, really birthed of God, and they're really, really teaching the Bible, I think you're going to want to go to church. I don't think you're going to have to make yourself go. And so that commitment becomes a little bit easier.
Well, for those of you guys that are on the fence about going to church, obviously you're more than welcome to come to our church. We want you to come to ours if you can. We have a sanctuary on East Brundage and Mount Vernon, VBF, in case you don't know. And then we have a sanctuary out in the northwest part of town.
6228 Coffee Road.
It's on Coffee Road.
We might have one in the southwest. We don't know yet.
Yeah, we're working on that. So,
but Josh, let me say
Las Vegas. I just got there, Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
There. We have a church in Vegas. Yeah.
20-year anniversary coming up this month, November 13th.
That's
but let me say one last thing before we sign off here. A lot of people, too, might see the church as something that's a waste of time. They're very busy, a lot of busy schedule. Going to church is just a waste of time. It's not relevant. It's a waste of time. And I've really been harping on this a lot lately. I believe that we exist to please God. I think God is very happy when we live in such a way that pleases Him. And so I think if you really believe in God and you're trying to be a Christian, I believe it's really cool to have one day a week that you actually get up early on a weekend and you get dressed, you take a shower before you get dressed, and you eat breakfast and you get in your car and use some of your gas. You drive to church and you say, hey, This is the one day of the week that we have chosen to honor God. And I think God gets very blessed by that. I think it makes God's heart happy. I did talk Sunday about God has feelings. All throughout the Bible, he gets angry, he gets jealous, he gets grieved. God has feelings. And to be able to set one day aside a week to say, God, this is the day we really want to set aside to specifically honor you. I think that makes God happy to go and say, we love you and you're that important in our life that the least we can do is take one day a week where we go gather with other believers and we learn about your word. And I think that it pleases God to go to church if you go to church.
I'm laughing and thinking about the fact that you said use some of your gas. That's kind of like tithing 10% of your income right there, right? Like using your gas if you live in California, especially.
Well, you know what's crazy about that, though? Sorry, Tony, I didn't cut you off. Is that as you do give that time to God, as we please God, the things that start happening in our life are tenfold than what you could even thought of happening. Like the things that start happening in our own life, you don't go to church to get anything, but you end up getting all of this stuff that helps you with raising your kids in your workplace, being a better friend, being a better all this stuff starts happening in your life just by going and pleasing God. It's crazy.
Vince, you're absolutely correct, because nothing that you invest in that gives you return is a waste of time.
Right.
Look at what people invest their time in: working out, dieting, school, education. You know, it's you can't consider it a waste, and I would say it's not a waste. And this is where you have to do. It says you got to try it.
Is that really even a wrong phrase? I'm going to go to church, or should it be I'm going to go to be with the church?
Ooh.
I'm going to go to a building to be with the church.
That's good.
And when we go, I mean, there's so many facets that really encourage you. We walk in, maybe you're in a bad mood, and you got these people with a gift of encouragement around you, and all of a sudden they're bringing your mood up, and then you get into the worship music, and you feel God's presence, because the Bible says he inhabits the praises of his children, and then you hear the pastor come out, and he says a couple things that really get you jazzed, going, whoa, I never thought of that before, and then you leave and do some high fives with people. I mean, it's really healthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing bummer about it is that not everybody's there yet. Yeah. If everybody would just come, I would think and that sounds crazy to say, but I'm just saying the more people that join our community, the more people that get there, that's when the church becomes alive. That's when it becomes a even better place. So if you feel like you came to church because you're like, you're going to make it a better
Vince,
place.
I've said it before. I'll be coming to church. I'll see people out there jogging and getting their boat ready to go skiing, and they're doing all this stuff, and I imply that they're not probably going to go to church. And I think if they knew what this life is about, if they knew what a blessing it is to go and hear God's word and to worship him, they would all be here. We would have to do 50, 100 services a week. It's ignorance. They don't know what this is all about. And with that, I don't know. Maybe you want to sign off. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic. We're gonna in the future, maybe next week, maybe not. I'm not sure yet. We haven't discussed it, but I would like to talk about misconceptions in the Bible and what people believe. That's a good topic. And so maybe we'll do that next week. But anyway, we just want to tell you guys. I hope we didn't say anything that offended anybody. Maybe you were the judgmental person at church, but if you were, you probably wouldn't even think you were. So that's good. But we all make mistakes, and even in church, sometimes we rub people wrong. And if you go to that person. If you know them, talk to them. And repair those relationships if you can. And if you can't, just try to be better. Try to be better. We can all be friendlier. We can all smile when we're at church. We can smile when we're out and about, because we are still representing the church when we're out and about, when we're at work, at school, wherever we're at, right? So we just want to encourage you guys to do that, and we love you guys. We thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or wherever, YouTube, and that way you'll make sure to keep up with the latest episode, right? Love you guys, and we will see ya or hear you soon, right?
Yeah, love you.
God bless.
See ya.
Mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane, and it's bubbling over like sweet champagne. You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You got your mama's sunshine, You got your daddy's ring.